Hello everybody, Larry Young here again with another segment of OLaMan Living Life with Purity. And so the other day they buried Pope Francis in Rome, and people are flocking there to see the crypt and things like that, pray at the site, to have this closeness that they feel they need to have. And the media is extolling the virtues of this man. I've seen a litany of especially American voices, cardinals, up there just talking about what a great guy and what an awesome pope this man was, putting him on par with John Paul II, talking about sainthood and all these things. And when I was watching this coverage, I was watching it with a couple of older ladies, one of them being my mother. And I asked my mother, I said, you follow this stuff pretty closely. I said, can you name 3 things that this Pope did in his 13 years? And she said, no, I don't think I can think of even one thing. And this is how unremarkable this was, and how this was more of a play to power and consolidation of power than it was about working the magic out in the world. Now, they did work the magic out in the world, especially with our U.S. tax dollars in the form of money going to NGOs, and one of those being Catholic Charities. And I'll talk more about that when I get Alex back here in the studio. Catholic Charities used to be a wonderful organization I was helped to develop funds for back in the day. And the primary goal was to raise money to feed people and to try to lift up their situation in which they were living. But what had happened here in the last decade or so is it got weaponized into an arm of the government and certain administrations to try to bring an unusual amount of immigrants into the country by going to their countries to load these people into airplanes and buses and to get them to the southern border to have them come across in a massive wave that overwhelmed the resources of this country, which is a hard thing to do. But my gosh, you bring in 10 to 20 million extra people, you give them all these benefits and things like that that even I can't get. That causes a problem in the real world situations. Rising costs go up, inflation was happening, transitory for so long, but when you bring in these extra 10 to 20 million renters and things like that, everything goes up as far as property costs, rents, and things like that, and it makes it tougher to get by. So I'm going to leave, though, the discussion of those things for another episode here, but it adds to the things I want to talk about today, so it's kind of a background filler. But right now I see all of us, no matter what church you go to or if you don't go to church, we're in a very dangerous time right now. The cardinals are gathering in Rome to have their conclave beginning next week to elect the new pope. A lot of people are talking about a conservative view with Cardinal Sarah, that he has the inside track. I think the man has no chance, given the climate and the breakdown of the actual members of the voting class of cardinals. I don't think there's a snowball's chance that we're going to get a conservative pope. If we do, it'll be an absolute miracle. And I believe in miracles, and I'm hoping for a miracle. But we need to watch out for this and be very, very careful. Don't believe everything that's being told to you, because the talking heads who are talking now on TV, they're usually going to cardinals, and a lot of these guys have a dog in the fight. They're trying to be the next pope. Don't let anyone fool you. Everyone wants to be the pope. It carries so much potential with it as far as wealth building and determination of how wealth is used around the globe and things like that. They can upset elections in countries. They they do have influence, and I think a lot of it's kind of gotten away from them here over the last decade or so, and they've gotten pretty egregious with it. But the real problem that we have right now, that we're in this dangerous time, is that we need to get men back into the mix. We're suffering a testosterone shortage, or a suffering of manhood in not only the Catholic Church, but I think all churches and all religious type speakers that I've seen. We need the men to step back up and to be men again and not be afraid to be men. For the last 60 years, at least, there's been an effort to suppress men and to eliminate men from the equation so much. They want to feminize men. And they've done a really good job of this, to make men feel bad about being men and to chastise them when they do be men, that they say, you don't need to be so rough, we need to talk about these things. We need to sort this stuff out, violence isn't the way. Well, the men didn't say violence was the way either. They were just saying, no, you're not going to do that, and I'm going to stop you if you try. And that's not violence, that's protection. Now, men and women are wired differently. Men have a wiring system, normal hetero men, let's put it this way. Their brains are wired more for protection. In the dog world, if they were a dog, they would be like a shepherd. They would be watching the surroundings, looking for things that are out of place, and then when they see something that's out of place, they're going to take action on it to try to either run it out of the circle or to make sure it's not a threat. That's how shepherd dogs react. Now, and that's how men are basically wired to be protectors. And this is their role, this is their nature. Women, on the other hand, are the compassionate ones. They're the ones who see something and they say, oh, what a shame. We could do something about that. I've got a plan here when her husband gets back, or when the man comes back, we're going to go and we're going to fix this, and I'm going to tell him how to go about getting this done. And typically the man will agree to the compassionate move by the woman and want to assist with that because he sees the goods coming out of that, and she's very concerned about this. So he shares that. But her natural wiring is to be open to people, and sometimes that puts women in a threatening situation because they don't always see things as the threats that they can really be. And so their compassion puts them in a mindset that leads them to potential victimhood. And the men are trying to stop that because they're trying to remove these threats. And so it frustrates them a lot of times when the women do things that they say, you shouldn't ought to have done that, because now look what we got. So with those basic thinkings and the wirings, we have troubles in our world right now because the women and the culture have worked very, very hard, especially in the churches and in the schools, to suppress thoughts of manhood and this inclination that men have to be protectors. They basically said, we don't need you, we can take care of ourselves, all the way down to, what are you trying to do opening the door for me? What are you trying to say? I can open the door. I don't need you. Get away from me. Well, women have been very, very successful in this battle for whatever it is, I don't know. But they've been very successful that they've beaten men back so much that men have become very feminized. And the women want the world to be feminine. But when they get a feminine world, they see how dangerous it is. They start retreating back and say, do something. This is out of hand. What happened? Well, we did what you wanted to do, and this is what happened. You let the snake out of the bag. And we told you it was a snake. You should have left it in there where we had it safeguarded, but you let it out. So now we got to go get that snake again, and, let's learn from this and stop doing it. But then they don't, because they go out and they see another bag, they see another snake in it, they want to let it out. Oh, the poor thing. You got to be careful with this, and we got to be honest with ourselves about things. The nature of things has been distorted, and we have to get back to a normalcy here. Otherwise, there isn't going to be anything left to work with. So, we've run men out of the discussion, and manhood has been kicked down as a virtue. And here's what we've brought is a feminized manhood. We have problematic men out there in our schools not being leaders, not being disciplined, not having protector type thinking. They're confused because their nature says protect, but the women and people around them say, no, stand back, that's not your job. We got people that do that. It's not your role. Don't do that. And it just causes problems. And we see people getting victimized, and I don't think I need to go into that anymore. I think everyone understands what that is. So with that being said, we've got a shortage of manhood going on in the world right now. And women need to extol the virtues of manhood again and say thank you to men and let them rise up to be men again. You've maybe lost a couple of generations here already. Let's not lose the next ones coming up. Let's get helpful. Let's get thankful about men in our lives and the good things that they do to try to protect us, because they're seeing things that you may not see. It's amazing what those shepherd dogs can see that you can't see, that as being a threat. And right now we're in that situation. So across the board, I don't know what the Cardinals are going to do, but I think with whoever they do elect to be the next pope is going to be a big sign for folks. We got some problems because the pool of candidates that they got to pick from has a certain taint to it, a certain coloring, a certain feminization that's happened. And I want to go through the numbers on this. So there was a poll that was taken of Catholic priests around the world, and they tried to dial in on feminized or actually gay priests who may be not acting on their gay lifestyle, but who knows? We've been told that they weren't doing that. We had our McCarricks and our Wilton Gregorys and other problematic people just here in the North American church. What's going on over in Europe, I really don't know, but I'm sure that they've got the same kind of problems over there. But what they found out from this poll was that 30 to 40% of our active priests are gay or have gay tendencies. 30 to 40%. These are the feminized men who have a gay sort of thinking about them, a feminized type of thinking. They're not men in any sense of the word. They're not the old school manly priests that I grew up with and knew of and had my experiences with, the Father Havels, even the Archbishop Knowles. These were real men. They hunted, they shot guns, they did things. They were out fishing. They were out, doing manly pursuits. They were building things. They got into the mix with it, laying bricks and all this other stuff. It wasn't their role all the time, but they were there when the crews were working. They got into it. And so we're missing that these days. There's a tendency back to just being more the compassionate role, the soft role, and all like that. And those kind of guys aren't the kind of people you want to protect you. They can give you advice, but they're not going to protect you. So be aware of that. Now, out of that 30 to 40% grouping come the selections then later on of your bishops and then your cardinals. And the numbers I thought were just out of bounds, but they're supported. But the same study found that 70% of the bishops or higher ranking are gay or have gay tendencies. So, and this was reported not by the general public, but by the other 30 to 40% of the gay priests that they were able to isolate and determine. Now, when you've got a certain population being the polling group, you're going to get skewed results. So if 30 to 40% of the priests were the ones who were gay and they were the ones that were being polled, chances are that they were not being completely honest about their responses about other things going on. And that's why I think that maybe the 70% might be a little high, but it might be totally accurate. Because whether they were trying to support their inclinations with saying, well, they do it too, we have to figure out what's going on with this particular subset. But we've also got to recognize that both sides are huge numbers. And they cause problems in the thinking and the orientation of what happens with our administration of the church and policies going forward. Now, this isn't just exclusive to the Catholic Church. Now, you got problems with pastors and preachers and reverends and all sorts of churches all across North America and around the world who are becoming very, very feminized in their roles and in their thinking, and they're not being manly leaders. And this is a problem, because when you're a young man and you're coming up, and I've said on the here before, and I'll say it again, a woman cannot raise a man alone. A single household with a mother cannot raise a man. She can raise an adult male, but she cannot raise a man, because she's never been a man, and she doesn't know how men think. So what young men need when they get jacking around and they start doing stupid shit, what they need is not a mom who's compassionate saying, well, why'd you do that? You're making me angry. You make me feel. Well, for the most part, the young guy really doesn't care. He's a young guy. He's stupid. His frontal cortex hasn't fully formed. He's just a dumbass. And I'll tell you from experience, I know that. So what a young man will respond to is a forceful older man who has his shit together that tells a young man to cut it out, and cut it out now, or you're going to contend with me. That's how you raise a young man to be a real man. You got to let him know that there are consequences, and it's going to come down, and it's going to come down immediately if you don't change course. This is what men do. This is what happens in the military. And this is why having many times women in the military, they may be able to do some of the things together, but I'll tell you, if I got shot out on a battlefield and my 200 pounds or whatever has to be hustled back off the field or whatever to safety, I don't believe that a woman's going to be able to drag my butt off of that area and fly under those bullets to come get me. Haven't seen it. I haven't seen any reports of valor in the field on that. It might be, but as a general rule, I don't think it's going to happen. And I think I'm probably going to have to die there if that was to happen. So that's a scenario that we can play out later on. But when you have these feelings in your leadership, this 30 to 40% of priests who report themselves as being gay and having gay thoughts and feminized feelings, you're putting them in charge of an entire parish that they're supposed to be doing formation and leadership to not only raise individuals, but try to help form families. I don't see how the two can work together in a meaningful and practical way. I just don't see it happening. Why would you put somebody with those kind of sentiments and feelings in that role? I think it's a mismanagement of our personnel. It's an affront to total hetero individuals to try to feminize them against their nature. And they can have understanding, but I don't think that a gay priest can raise a parish. The same way I don't think a woman alone can raise a man. She can do great with the girls because she used to be a girl. But with the boys, this is why they kind of fall apart, and this is why they end up having troubles. The girls are finding their own troubles out there. They're experiencing a lot of social manias. And I'll talk about social manias when I get Alex back in here, because he's more of an expert on these things from his psychological backgrounds too. But social manias take place in typical the subset of younger women. And they, like, I'll give an example, like bulimia. Bulimia was a problem basically entrenched strictly in young girls, young women. And it didn't really cross over into the male subset except for those who had really heavily entrenched feminine feelings brought on by the way they were raised, or their nurturing, not their nature so much, but how they were raised. And so, but bulimia, for the longest time, there were no reports of bulimia, or very few along in the line. And all of a sudden, we got bulimia, and it stayed up there and it grew. They had a case of bulimia, and it didn't just be an isolated case. It became a pandemic across the board with young women all around. They were all, barfing and whatever at mealtime, getting up from the table to go and punch a couple fingers down their throat. This became a thing, and then it ended up having a dying off, and now bulimia is not as much the problem, but it's been replaced by other things. Taylor Swift came along, and Swifties, they're all part of a social mania too. But Taylor Swift will no longer be so popular, and then they'll end up something else. The Beatles wave, the Beatles fans, primarily young women, were making the wave. The guys went along with it because that's where the chicks were. Guys aren't stupid. So you've got this feminization going on in the church and churches and in religion, in the schools, and trying to take over the culture to make it all feminine. But now we're having problems because more and more problems are coming up because the guard dogs, the shepherds, aren't doing their jobs because they've all become part of the herd. And so what we need to do is to get these men back out there to call things out. So one of the things, men need to speak up, and they need to understand that they're not wrong. They've just been put down for so long. They've been victimized here, and they need to stand back up. They need to be, take the lessons from compassion with you. Don't be a jackass. Don't be a dick. But let's, take manhood back and lead people. Take care of people. Let's usher in, this era of greatness. Let's not make just America great. Let's make the world great again. There's potential here. We have to take advantage of this right now because we're in such a dangerous time right now. And depending on what comes out as far as who gets elected to be the next pope, it can have extensive, long-ranging, problematic circumstances, and we need to be careful about that. So we need to speak up. Men do. And women need to let them and need to understand that. Let us hold the door for you. Let us hold your hand. Let us put you on a pedestal again. Don't fight it. It's okay. We have a real problem and shortage, they say, in priests. And it's one of the reasons that the United States has become a mission country. A high percentage of the Catholic priests working in this country right now are either on loan to us from foreign countries, or they came out of Africa or Southeast Asia, where the seminaries are not quite the same as they are here in the United States. The guidance is a little bit less. It's different, culturally different. But people are so hungry for the Mass and the Eucharist, they'll basically take whatever they can get. And the bishops are part of the problem with this too, because the bishops aren't being selective. They're just putting bodies into roles to keep these locations, these churches, open and offering the masses so they can keep the people in the seats, to keep the donations coming in, to keep these places open. It's a short and condensed kind of thing, but when you highest of quality coming in, you have to deal with what you got. So it's like old Mother Hubbard going to the cupboard, and there's not even a bone there, but you got to make do with what you can find to try to make something out of that. So what are we going to do about priests? Well, women say, well, let's make women priests. I would submit that we've already had women as priests with these 30 to 40% gay priests already. We've already got that kind of feminine thinking already working. Now, do they want to have women actually be the priests? I think they do. And I think that's going to cause an even bigger problem with our younger men in the society looking up to these things. But it's something that'll probably go away in years. But I don't think that you can ever change the way women think inherently. And you're going to have the same problem with women trying to raise families and to develop men at the same time. They'll do great with the women, but they're not going to be able to help form the men and the family leaders, the St. Josephs that we're trying to create here. I just don't see that that can happen. Maybe I'm wrong. I'll die. We'll let the rest of the world take care of things, but I'll be gone. Well, I have an idea. And one of those is with our seminarians coming out. So often we graduate these seminarians and then we ordain them in the same year. So many times we got seminarians coming out between the ages of 25 and 27. They've lived a rather coddled life up until then, I'd have to say. Most of these graduating seminarians have pretty smooth hands. They haven't done work. That's a concern because they don't have the reasoning and the seasoning of life to actually be a priest at that point, in my opinion. Now, I know a lot of people say, oh, the Lord, gives the faculties. I said, yeah, I understand, but he doesn't give them the experience. And so you got a lot of these dumbasses coming out who really don't have, I don't think they're dumb, but they don't have the reasoning and the seasoning of life. And they're being brought out to be the formators of their parishes and things like this. And they're not ready. They can't tell you how the pressures of meeting a mortgage and dealing with escalating health insurance costs and things like this go on in your life and how they can affect you and cause concerns about your choices you have to make. So I think what we need to do with these seminarians coming out is we need to, like a dough, a pizza dough, you have to let it rise. It comes out, yeah, it's pizza dough, but if you throw it in the oven right now, you're not going to get a very good, pizza crust. But if you let it rise for a couple hours, and then become all it can be, then you can move that out. Now you got a good pizza dough. All the ingredients were there in the beginning, but it needed time to season up and get poofy, okay? Same thing I think we need to do with our seminarians. We need to get these guys out of the seminaries and put them into the real world, and I would say have them serve as a deacon for a minimum of 7 years, living on their own in the real world. They might be working in the diocese or something like this, but they need to have regular jobs. And then they can be the deacon at the parishes, and they can work at several of them. They get this tutelage that goes with them from other priests. They can help them out with other administrators. They can learn how, the sausage is made, as we say. They can learn the ropes on this stuff, and then they can become better servers of the Holy Spirit in the lives of the families in these parishes. Because right now they come out and they can talk all the stuff about the Bible and other things like that. Great. But how do we apply this? This is the problem that has to happen with family formation and crises that happen, and that we want the priests to be there to try to help these folks out with. So I say that they need about a 7-year timeline, and this lets them also figure out if they want to pursue being a priest yet, without all the pressure and the expectation that comes out of the seminary that, yeah, I'm on course, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to be, a priest and all like this. And then what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to have to learn to be a priest, I guess. I'm saying that there's a middle ground. So put them on track to be a deacon for 7 years. They can learn. And in that time, if they decide that they want to remain celibate or to take on the life of being a priest, and they'll know then in that 7 years whether or not they have a gay inclination that they can't fight, or they're also going to know if they've got an inclination to maybe take a different path, a different course here, but same along the similar, but to maybe be a family man, maybe to marry a woman, raise a family. We need good families. We need good, strong fathers. They could be a great role model that way too. And then it still wouldn't be over under my plan for them to be a priest if they wanted to, because while we take care of those younger guys and we give them their 7 years, I think it may not be a bad idea to allow married men to be priests with a set of certain circumstances that they would have to cover as well. The first one would be that a married man would have to be at least 45 years old. He would have to have no dependents in the home. His children, if he had them, would have to be on their own and out the house. And his wife could be either alive or deceased. That wouldn't be an issue. Maybe for her it would, but not for his qualifications. That's a joke, so get it. But the man being 45 years old, no dependents in the home, a 45-year-old man has the reasoning and seasoning of life. He understands what it takes and what the problems are in running a home and raising kids and getting them out the door successfully. Now, I think that this 45-year-old man should have also have been a deacon for a minimum of 7 years as well. And he should also have had to have accumulated the course requirements that might be required by the bishop for ordination. But I think that after 45 years of life and living and 7 years serving as a deacon, having raised a family, being in good stead with the parishes and the diocese as a whole, and the bishop, knowing these people, very intimately as far as, knowing who they are, been to their homes, these types of things, knowing these men, that's going to get you a better quality, I think, of priest out there in the world, and we can help move out some of this gay thinking and this feminization and get back to having real men being our priests and leading. Now, you're never going to eliminate the total feminization thing, and I love women. Gosh, do I love women. I love everything about them. I'd rather sit at a table with 3 women for lunch than 3 guys. Because typically what happens when I sit at a table with 3 guys for lunch or something like that, 9 times out of 10, one of them is going to start bitching about their wife, and then the others start bitching, and it's like, when did the circus come to town? These guys are nuts. Why are you so angry? Why don't you look at yourself a little bit? And but the women are the same way too. They always want to go through old conversations and have them out with you again. A conversation you weren't a part of, but they want you to feel it and understand what they went through with this conversation. I don't know what it is, but it's a chick thing, and hope you people understand. It's not a bad thing. It's just a difference in how we operate. So, married men, I think, are okay to be priests under a select set of circumstances. I think there'd be a lot of great guys out there that could be married priests as long as they don't have the distractions of the rest of the household upon them, and they can commit themselves to being available to the parish. They can't stop being a grandfather or whatever, but they can't be so tied up day to day that they can't do their duties as a priest. So I think there's some opportunities there. We can kind of cull the herd a little bit as far as the dangerous points and the dangerous path that we're on right now, and then maybe get into having a better selection of candidates for being our priests than what we're doing right now, just taking the next man up and bringing him in, feminine as he is, and then shoving him out the door and make him into a priest. Because a lot of these guys out there being priests right now, they have, I've witnessed a lot of anger issues, some of the yelling that's gone on with some of these priests at staffers and things like that. And it's not attractive. It's not manly. It's insecurity showing itself. And there's a lot of that goes on. But we got to fix this. It's not going to happen overnight, but it has to be a thinking that comes with all this. So I'm excited about getting Alex back in here. He had a bout with the flu, and we were afraid it was going to turn into pneumonia. There's a breakout of pneumonia in our area here. A lot of people are getting a double pneumonia. So hopefully in your area you're safe from this and you're being careful about that. So if you got a cough that's lasting with you for more than 2 or 3 days, pay attention to it. Don't put it off. Make sure if it's getting to be nagging and starting to hurt a little bit, get it taken care of because it might save your life. So got more to talk about this. So I'd love to hear your comments on this. I really would, because it helps me get a feel for what your thoughts are, and maybe there's something I hadn't thought about. So especially if you're a deacon out there, I'd love to hear what you have to say about that, because I know a lot of you guys have wonderful wives to back you up with this in your path. And I want to know what you would think about this. And what do you think about the 7-year plan of readiness that would go with this? And I think if we did that, you would have some really, really strong priests and people that can be proud and forceful to get out in the world, and they're not going to lay down on this. They're going to take the bull by the horns kind of stuff, and that's what we need. A lot of you guys out there I've met some of you guys are, you're tougher than you allow us to know, and I appreciate that about you, because there's a calm, quiet confidence that comes with that, and that's what leads men. And you know what I'm talking about. So in the meantime, I love you, and I'll be back.